Good day and welcome to this episode of Focus On with me, Kiamogetse Mosepele. Today we put the focus on South Africa's venture capital sector. Now, according to the Southern African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association's 2024 Venture Capital Industry Survey, the sector is a robust and growing sector with the total capital invested in startups exceeding 3 billion rand since the inception of the survey, and total investments increasing by 17.8% compared to the previous year. Now, I am joined by a company vested in this space. This is the venture capital firm 54 Collective, formerly known as Founders Factory Africa. And I'm joined by the Chief Executive Officer, Bongani Sithole, on what these numbers mean for his organization and more. Sir, thank you so much and welcome to the program. Now, as I've touched your investment within the venture capital space, I'd just like to explore this rebrand where you're moving from Founders Factory Africa and now your new home or the rebirth of 54 Collective. Tell us more about that.
Firstly, thank you so much. It's great to be here. Founders Factory Africa was born in 2018, and we had a clear mandate to essentially invest into African startup founders because we strongly believe that entrepreneurship is the way in which we can be able to build economies, not only in South Africa, but across the continent. We have learned a lot over the last 4 to 5 years. Today, what we call a rebrand is actually a launch of a new company, a new firm, a new VC firm called 54 Collective. So the founders of Founders Factory Africa back in 2018, and of course, the 5 years of experience, we are now launching this new company, 54 Collective.
Now, I just want you to just give us a lay of the land in terms of where the current VC space is looking like within South Africa, but largely also Africa, because I know you operate beyond the South African borders. Just what does that look like, and how is 54 Collective now going to enter that space and perhaps expand those possibilities that lie?
So perhaps maybe let me start by the actual name 54 Collective. 54 is a representation of 54 countries in Africa. So our goal is to ensure that we are focusing largely on the 4 major regions that have historically received capital or venture capital, and using those as launchpad to be able to touch all the other African countries that historically have not received venture capital money. So 54 Collective will be operating in South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt as its local presence. We have about 70 people, the venture platform team that is working side by side with entrepreneurs. So those key hubs, for the most part, the capital that you referenced, that's where capital is going. And we're starting to see new emerging markets coming up with innovation. The likes of the Francophone market, we have started to look at, North Africa, likes of Tunisia, etc. And we're seeing a lot of innovation coming out of those markets. So as a result, the geographical presence that we have will give us a way to expand into those markets so that we can be able to do investments. You would have seen that over the last couple of years, venture capital has grown quite significantly. Pre-COVID, I think we reached the heights of $6 to $7 billion US dollars. And that gives us an assurance that there is an international appetite to look at Africa as an innovative continent and the next frontier of growth when it comes to innovation. There are a lot of challenges, but I think entrepreneurs who are building tech-led businesses are using technology as a way to solve these problems. And we have built an association with our local teams to work with local founders to solve local problems.
And you've given such an extensive picture in terms of the footprint that you're trying to increase. But I just want to also touch on the entrepreneurs that you're housing. What is the funding approach and the interaction with them in terms of just supporting that, the effort to create our own employment as Africans? What does that look like?
So in this new company 54 Collective, our mission is very simple, is to redefine investing in Africa. And the second part of it is helping entrepreneurs to build without boundaries. If I separate those two and explain the first in answering your question on funding and how we fund, the idea of redefining investments for us means that we have learned a lot about the African space, especially early stage, because 54 Collective focuses on idea stage right up to pre-Series A in terms of the stages that we invest into. So we looked at the challenges in that space, and we've realized that money alone is not enough. So we wanted to find pathways to solve for those challenges in how we invest, and hence the term redefining investments. So that looks like threefold. One is we would put in, we're going to put in capital for equities in exchange of equity to startups. The second is that we've realized that many startups, they fail because they don't have enough runway or enough capital to essentially build out their business. So the second way in which we're helping them is to put in a non-dilutive capital. What that means is we give you capital, but we're not going to take equity. It's a loan, essentially, at a very low interest rate of 5%. So, and you'll never find that anywhere in Africa. So that helps entrepreneurs at early stages to be able to have a little bit more money, to be able to test out the ideas, to build and scale and hire more people, to essentially build quickly. Last but not least, we are very intentional about investing into women. If you look at VC globally, women-funded businesses are less than 10%. And we are very intentional about getting to a 50% mark on our 105 investments that we'll be doing over the next 5 years through 54 Collective. To date, we're sitting at about 45%, which is really good. So we are giving additional capital to women-led businesses for the reasons that we have seen that a lot of women are not being funded. So we want to change that. So that part means redefining. The second part of building without boundaries for us means that we have realized the challenges across the 54 states, from currency devaluation, lack of access, challenges with distribution, et cetera, et cetera. So the question is, can our presence across these 4 major regions help us, or rather help entrepreneurs to essentially see Africa as a global a place to essentially serve customers, as opposed to I'm building a business for South Africa? Can we help entrepreneurs to think about I'm building solutions for an African customer, and it doesn't really matter where I am, I can be able to serve any of the markets that we have in Africa, because we've realized that in many ways, as much as it's 54 different states, in some ways we are facing the same challenges. So why not help entrepreneurs to break these barriers for them to see 1.2 billion people as an opportunity to serve them through that technology.
I really appreciated how you touched on the efforts to increase women empowerment, and it's so fitting within the context of South Africa, as it is Women's Day, and it's an approach that just expands the common efforts to just prioritize women empowerment within this month. But I'm also interested in another underrepresented group, which is the youth. And considering the context of Africa, where we are primarily a young population and we stand to be the youngest population in the future, what is your approach with bringing in young entrepreneurs within your business?
That is actually quite core to our business model. We have been funded by great LPs or investors, from family offices to corporates and also foundations. And to make reference, the likes of MasterCard Foundation, that is truly focused on how we can utilize entrepreneurship as a way to bring more young people into the ecosystem of entrepreneurship. So part of our goal, besides women, is to essentially make sure that we're making investments into young people to get into entrepreneurship. Just to give you a bit of contrast, if you are in the West or the North Europe, young people, they actually look at entrepreneurship as being equal to finding a job in a corporate. So which means that it's in par in terms of how you can build your career, whereas Africa and emerging markets are still so far behind. And we do acknowledge that Africa has quite a lot of young people. So part of our focus in these investments is how do we enable young people to see entrepreneurship as a pathway to build their career, so that we can be able to change the status quo of Africa. So that's pretty much core to our mandate.
So it's essentially solving for yourself as a young entrepreneur and going out and seeking those opportunities, not only for yourself, but your community. But I also really want to touch on some of the criteria. What does it take to essentially be absorbed within your venture capital firm, and what can potential entrepreneurs look out for and seek to achieve?
Great. So we are, being in a VC space means that we are looking for tech-enabled businesses. So if you are a young person, you're a founder of a business, whether you've got an idea or you've got a business that's already in the market, as long as it's still in the stages of what we call early stage, so between concept and pre-series A, founders can really apply. We are sector agnostic, which means that any sector is more than welcome. So all the founders or young people who have tech-led or tech-enabled businesses that see VC as a pathway to essentially fund their ambitions, then they can come to 54 Collective and we'll be able to build with them.
And lastly, just before we go, what sets you apart from other venture capital firms?
Good question. So today, if you look at Africa, there's no single venture capital firm that is pan-African that has 70 people who are full-time, who are working side by side with entrepreneurs. I'm a South African. I run a company of 70 people across the continent. I understand Kenya, I understand Nigeria, but I'm not a Nigerian, right? So the question is, how do you actually support and build with a Nigerian founder? So we needed to essentially work with local teams. So we hired expertise, people who themselves have been part of startups previously, to essentially work and navigate the challenges of the local market with our team. So that's one. Two, is the funding structures that I gave you earlier on around how we are diversifying or redefining investments. That's completely unique. Last but not least is, if you look at VCs just generally, there is a separation between commercial and impact, right? It's either you're an impact VC or you're a commercially VC. We've decided to bring both into the same pocket. The reason why is we don't necessarily see why it needs to be separated, because we strongly believe that impact needs to be sustained by a commercially sound business model. Because then otherwise, if you're just driving an impact-led business, you're consistently going to need grants capital. So we are fostering impact through commercially led business models. So those are the three things that basically as a VC makes us quite unique.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like quite an attractive offer, just touching on that Pan-African approach towards your company. And it's certainly interesting to hear some of the insights you've offered us. But unfortunately, that is where we have to park this conversation, as we have run out of time. I want to give a special thank you to my guest. He is Bongani Sithole, the Chief Executive Officer of 54 Collective, for joining us. From me, Keamogetse Mosepele, it's goodbye for now.